You think you've moved on, you think you've healed, but there's a wound you've never dared to touch, the one tied to the woman who first held your soul before the world ever hurt you, your mother. No one leaves childhood untouched, and for many, the deepest emotional scars are not carved by strangers, but by the very hands that once rocked us to sleep. Our mothers shape our inner world long before we learn the language to describe it. Whether she was loving or distant, nurturing or narcissistic, present or absent, her influence becomes the lens through which we see love, trust, worth, and even ourselves. This is not about blame. This is about understanding. Because healing doesn't begin by pointing fingers. It begins by seeing the invisible patterns you've been repeating since childhood. If you still struggle with boundaries, self-worth, emotional regulation, or people-pleasing, it might be time to revisit your earliest emotional blueprint. Many of us walk through life carrying our mother's unhealed wounds, mistaking them as part of our own identity. But here's the truth. You will never fully heal until you uncover what her love taught you, what her pain passed on to you, and what part of you is still trying to earn her approval. Whether you had a loving, complicated, toxic, or absent relationship with your mother, this conversation will awaken something inside you. You may cry, you may resist, you may finally feel seen, but one thing is certain. You will understand yourself in a way you never have before. So please, listen carefully to these 10 truths. They're not just lessons, they are keys. And one of them might just unlock the part of your heart that's been aching for peace. Number 1, your mother was your first mirror. From the moment you were born, before language gave structure to thought or memory had a name, your mother was your first mirror, reflecting not only your existence but your worth. As infants, we do not form a sense of self in isolation. We form it through the emotional gaze of our caregivers. The way she looked at you, touched you, responded to your cries or didn't. Those moments became the blueprint for how you learn to value yourself. If her eyes sparkled with joy when she saw you, you internalized the belief that you were lovable. If her expression was often indifferent, stressed, or cold, you may have silently concluded that love must be earned, that simply existing isn't enough. Her energy became your first emotional language. Long before you knew words like self-worth or validation, you felt them, or the lack of them, through her presence. If she embraced your emotions and held space for you to express them, you likely learned that your feelings mattered. But if she shut you down, dismissed your tears, or made you feel like a burden, your young heart quickly adapted to survive by silencing your truth. This is where people-pleasing is born, where emotional suppression takes root, where the false self starts to develop, a version of you molded not by your essence, but by what you believed you had to be in order to be accepted. That mirror, your mother, didn't just reflect. You absorbed her reflection as your identity. Her moods became your weather system. Her praise or criticism shaped your confidence. Her availability or absence shaped your attachment style. If she struggled with self-love, self-expression, or boundaries, you likely absorbed those struggles too, often without ever realizing they weren't yours to carry. Even if she meant well, even if she loved you deeply, her emotional imprint left its mark. And that's why so many people find themselves as adults still wrestling with invisible wounds that trace back to childhood, to the face they first looked into when trying to understand, who am I? Am I enough? Am I safe to be me? Healing begins the moment you realize that not everything you feel about yourself is true. Some of it is inherited perception. And if your mother was unable to fully see, love, or understand you, it's not because you were unworthy. It's because she couldn't mirror what she didn't yet recognize in herself. But now, as an adult, you have the power to become your own mirror. You can choose to reflect back truth, compassion, and dignity to the parts of you that were once neglected. You can break the trance of inherited self-perception and rewrite the narrative. The mirror no longer controls you. You now get to decide what is real, what is worthy, and most importantly, who you truly are. Number 2. Her pain became your pattern. Her pain became your pattern not because you chose it, but because you were too young to know that it wasn't yours to carry. As a child, you observed more than you understood. Watching your mother struggle with sadness, anxiety, anger, loneliness, or emotional detachment without the words or wisdom to name what was happening, instead of recognizing her behavior as a reflection of her own internal wounds, you did what all children do. You made it about yourself. If she was overwhelmed, you learned to become small. If she was emotionally unavailable, you learned not to need. If she was volatile, you learned to anticipate her moods like a weather forecast. These unconscious survival strategies didn't come from logic. They came from a desperate desire to stay safe, accepted, and close to the person you were biologically wired to attach to. And so, her unresolved pain, her trauma, her insecurities, her emotional baggage became the unspoken curriculum of your early life. If she distrusted others, you learned suspicion. If she had no boundaries, you became enmeshed. If she gave too much or not enough, you developed a distorted understanding of love, giving either too much of yourself or never believing you deserved anything in return. This is how generational pain travels. Quietly, invisibly, through behaviors, moods, emotional reactions, and unspoken expectations. Her beliefs about herself, I'm not good enough, I'm always abandoned, became embedded in the way she treated you, and slowly they began to shape how you saw yourself. You may now find yourself repeating her life in eerie ways, attracting similar relationships, sabotaging your happiness, avoiding your emotions, or burning out from trying to prove your worth. Not because you lack intelligence or strength, but because her coping mechanisms became your template for survival. And until you step back and ask, whose pain is this really? You'll keep living her unhealed story like it's your own. The most dangerous patterns are the ones we don't even realize we're repeating. But awareness is the first act of healing. When you see that her pain isn't your identity, when you stop blaming yourself for how she showed up, and when you begin to treat your inner world as something separate and sacred, you begin to reclaim your power. You are not here to relive her suffering. You are here to transform it, to become the one who breaks the cycle, the one who recognizes the inherited emotional DNA and says, it ends with me. This doesn't mean rejecting her. It means honoring your story enough to write a new ending. Her pain was real, but so is your right to peace, joy, and a life that's no longer governed by patterns you didn't choose. Help her to forgive. Help her to feel. Help her to trust. Help her to release fear, joy, and a life that's no longer governed by patterns you didn't choose. You didn't cause her pain, but you do have the power to heal its legacy by no longer making it your own. I kindly request all my viewers to please note that my channel's name is Peak Motivation and the URL is www.youtube.com/@peakmotivation PS6C. This is my voice and content. If you come across any cheaters, liars, or fake people copying my speeches and uploading them on their own channels, please unsubscribe from them immediately and report their channels. Because God and Jesus hate liars and thieves, it is also our duty to reject and oppose such dishonest people. If you find my speeches inspiring, impressive, motivational, and spiritually awakening, then please support my channel by subscribing at www youtube.com/@peakmotivation, P6C, liking, sharing, and commenting on the videos thoughtfully. Thank you. May God's mercy be upon you wherever you are, and may you always remain under His protection and care. Amen. Now, let us move forward with today's speech. Number 3, love was conditional and you learned to perform. Love was conditional and you learned to perform, not because you were fake, but because that's what survival demanded in a home where love came with strings attached. As a child, your nervous system quickly picked up on the unspoken rules. Love was earned, not given freely. You may have noticed that affection only came when you pleased her, when you succeeded, stayed quiet, looked perfect, or suppressed your needs to meet hers. Every smile, every hug, every moment of warmth felt like a prize for compliance, not a natural birthright. And when you didn't perform, when you had a bad day, a big emotion, a messy moment, you may have been met with criticism, withdrawal, guilt, tripping, or cold silence. Slowly but surely, you began to link love with approval, and approval with self-abandonment. You learned to read the room before you spoke, to anticipate her expectations before you acted, to shapeshift into the child she wanted you to be rather than the soul you truly were. Over time, this performance became second nature, an invisible mask you wore to feel safe and accepted. And though it may have looked like confidence or obedience on the outside, inside you were slowly disconnecting from your authentic self. Your needs, your desires, your voice, they were all edited, silenced, or minimized to maintain the illusion of love. This pattern didn't stay in childhood, it followed you into adulthood, where you may now find yourself overachieving, overgiving, people-pleasing, or constantly seeking validation. You may fear conflict, avoid expressing your true feelings, or believe that you must always be strong and have it together to be worthy of love. And yes, I said to be worthy. You may now find yourself overachieving, overgiving, people-pleasing, or being abandoned, overlooked, overworth. This is why we should always empathize that people are very scared and vulnerable. Relationships may feel like emotional negotiations instead of safe havens. You might subconsciously seek out partners, friends, or employers who mirror your mother's energy, demanding, inconsistent, or emotionally distant, because part of you is still trying to finally earn the unconditional love you never received. And even when people do offer you real love, you may not trust it, because deep down, you believe love must be proven, not received. This internalized performance isn't your fault. It was your way of surviving an environment that lacked emotional safety. But now, it's your responsibility to recognize that you no longer need to earn love by performing. Real love doesn't require you to shrink, to strive, or to betray your truth. Real love meets you in your wholeness. Healing means removing the mask. It means allowing yourself to be seen in your imperfection, to express your needs without guilt, and to know that you are worthy not for what you do, but for who you are. You don't have to be perfect to be loved. You just have to be real. And the day you stop performing is the day you start coming home to the love you've always deserved. Number 4, he taught you what you deserve. Even if she was wrong, she taught you what you deserve. Even if she was wrong. Because as a child, you had no other framework for understanding your worth than the way she treated you, spoke to you, and showed up for you. Whether she did so intentionally or unknowingly, her behavior toward you laid the emotional foundation for what you came to believe you were entitled to in life. From love, respect, attention, and safety to how you should be treated by others and how you should treat yourself. If she consistently criticized you, you may have learned that nothing you do is ever good enough. If she was emotionally unavailable, you may now equate intimacy with disappointment, or believe that your emotions are too much, too inconvenient to matter. If she was controlling, dismissive, or inconsistent, you may have learned to second-guess yourself, to apologize for your existence, or to seek permission before you speak your truth. The point is, she didn't just raise you, she raised your internal standard for what kind of love you would accept. And if she was operating from her own unhealed pain, chances are she taught you lessons in worth that were warped by her wounds. But you didn't know that. You took her treatment as fact. You believed that how she loved or failed to love you was an accurate measure of your value, when in reality, it was only a reflection of her capacity at the time. And now, even as an adult, you might still be living by those invisible teachings, accepting crumbs instead of connection, mistaking dysfunction for passion, tolerating disrespect disguised as love, or struggling to assert boundaries because somewhere deep inside you're still holding on to the belief that you don't deserve better. You may settle for less in relationships, stay silent in rooms where you should speak, or overextend yourself trying to prove you're worthy because her voice still echoes in the back of your mind, shaping the way you see yourself. But here's the truth. She was wrong. She may have done the best she could, but if her version of love taught you to doubt yourself, to abandon your needs, or to dim your light to keep peace, then it's time to rewrite those lessons. It's time to rewrite those lessons. You don't have to keep repeating the emotional standards she set for you. You can re-educate your heart. You can choose to believe that you deserve to be loved without conditions, to be heard without begging, to be seen without performing. The most powerful healing comes when you realize that just because someone couldn't give you what you needed doesn't mean you weren't worthy of it. Their limitations do not define your deservingness. And today, right now, you have the power to break the spell, to raise your standards, and to start treating yourself as someone worthy of tenderness, presence, and protection. Not because someone finally gives that to you, but because you finally decide you're no longer available for anything less. Number 5, you may still be seeking her approval in others. You may still be seeking her approval in others, not because you're weak or unaware, but because the longing to be seen, validated, and loved by your mother doesn't simply vanish with age. It morphs, it disguises itself, and it embeds deeply into your adult relationships, silently influencing your choices without you even realizing it. As children, we are hardwired to crave connection with our primary caregiver, especially our mothers. And when that connection is inconsistent, dismissive, conditional, or emotionally unavailable, the need for her approval becomes an internal hunger that never feels quite full. Even if you've grown up, built a life, and distanced yourself from your childhood, you may find yourself drawn to people who echo her emotional tone. Partners who withhold affection until you perform. Friends who never fully accept you. Bosses whose praise feels just out of reach. Of social circles that make you feel like you must prove your worth to belong. It's not accidental. It's repetition. It's your inner child unconsciously recreating the emotional dynamic that was never resolved, hoping that this time someone will give you the approval your mother didn't. You may chase success not just for personal fulfillment, but in hopes that someone, anyone, will finally say, "You're enough." You may overextend in relationships, becoming the fixer, the helper, the achiever, because you were once the child who believed, "If I can just be good enough, she'll love me fully." And even when you receive love, you might not trust it, because it doesn't feel familiar. Real, healthy love can feel foreign if you were raised on emotional unpredictability. This pattern becomes especially dangerous when you find yourself trapped in cycles of people-pleasing, perfectionism, or attaching to emotionally unavailable people, confusing their rejection for a challenge to earn love the way you never could with your mother. But here's the truth that can liberate you. Their approval isn't hers. No one in your life today holds the authority to give or withhold your worth. Not a partner, not a friend, not a parent, not a boss. The validation you've been searching for was never meant to come from others. It was meant to be reclaimed by you. Healing means noticing when you're bending over backwards for acceptance and asking yourself, whose approval am I really chasing? It means realizing that what you didn't get back then cannot be retroactively fixed through others. It must be healed within. When you begin giving yourself the unconditional love, compassion, and validation your younger self always needed, the compulsive need for external approval begins to dissolve. You stop overcompensating. You stop settling. You stop abandoning yourself for temporary validation, because finally you understand your worth was never up for negotiation. It was only buried under years of trying to earn love that should have been freely given. And now you are free to become the one who approves of you. Not because you've done enough, but because you were always enough. Number 6. She did the best she could, but that doesn't mean it was enough. She did the best she could, but that doesn't mean it was enough. And holding both truths at once is one of the most difficult yet liberating steps on the path to healing. It's easy to get trapped in the polarity of either vilifying or idealizing your mother, especially when you begin to examine your wounds and realize how many of them trace back to her words, her choices, or her silence. But healing is not about blame, it's about clarity. Yes, she may have been doing her best with the tools she had, with her own unresolved pain, in the circumstances she found herself in. Maybe she didn't have access to emotional education, support systems, or even the freedom to heal herself. Maybe she parented you the only way she knew, repeating what was modeled for her, and understanding that can soften your heart with compassion. But compassion doesn't mean denial. Because even if she did the best she could, it may still have left you feeling unseen, unloved, misunderstood, emotionally neglected, or even harmed. Her best effort may have still failed to meet your emotional needs, leaving you to grow up with voids you didn't know how to name, but carried in your relationships, your identity, your nervous system. The truth is, intention and impact are not the same. She may have intended to love you, but that doesn't erase the pain of feeling emotionally abandoned. She may have sacrificed for you, but that doesn't cancel the effects of her rage, control, or unpredictability. She may have provided for you, but that doesn't mean she truly connected with you. And as a child, you didn't just need her effort, you needed her presence, her regulation, her tenderness, her belief in you. When those things were missing, even if unintentionally, the wound was still created. And pretending otherwise out of guilt, obligation, or fear of disloyalty only prolongs your suffering. Your pain is valid, even if she didn't mean to cause it. Your needs mattered, even if they were never acknowledged. And you are allowed to grieve what you didn't receive without making her the villain. Holding her humanity and your hurt in the same hand is not betrayal, it's maturity. It's the point where you stop waiting for her to apologize or become someone she's not, and you start giving yourself what was missing. You begin to understand that forgiveness doesn't require forgetting, and honoring her doesn't require denying your truth. Healing comes when you allow yourself to stop defending her at the cost of abandoning yourself. It comes when you release the guilt for feeling hurt by someone you love. You are not here to diminish her legacy. You're here to untangle yourself from it, so you can grow into the person you were always meant to be. Her best might have built the foundation, but now it's your turn to renovate, to repair, and to rise. Because your healing doesn't depend on her doing more. It depends on you finally doing what's enough for your own soul. Number 7, you don't have to become her or her opposite. You don't have to become her or her opposite, because either extreme is still a reaction to her, not a reflection of your authentic self. And as long as your identity is shaped in opposition or imitation of your mother, you're not truly free. It's a subtle but powerful truth. When you unconsciously replicate her behaviors, her emotional shutdowns, her over-functioning, her self-sacrifice, her harsh inner critic, you're living her unhealed patterns, passing down pain not because you want to, but because it feels familiar, automatic, even normal. On the other hand, when you swing to the opposite pole, vowing never to be like her, suppressing any trait that remotely resembles hers, becoming hyper-independent, emotionally distant, or overly permissive, you're still defining yourself through her. Whether you're mirroring her or rebelling against her, she's still writing the script, and your life remains an echo of hers instead of an original voice. This unconscious reaction is understandable. When someone has hurt you or failed to protect you, it's natural to promise yourself, "I'll never be like that." You may avoid exposure to violence, because indefatigable, you may avoid exposure to violence, depending on how angry it made you. But none of these extremes are truly yours. They're emotional survival responses, rooted in a past you've outgrown. True healing begins when you stop reacting and start choosing. It's when you realize you don't have to carry on her legacy of pain. But you also don't have to live in rejection of her either. As I've said, this is a book that does not advise action. This is a book that does not advise action. This is a book that does not advise action. This is a book that does not advise. You get to define what kind of woman, man, or human you want to be, not based on avoiding her mistakes or repeating her strengths, but based on your own values, your own healing, your own truth. Maybe she was loud, so you became quiet. Maybe she was passive, so you became aggressive. Maybe she was self-sacrificing, so you became selfish. But what if you didn't have to be either? What if you could be balanced, intentional, emotionally aware, not as a reaction to her, but as an expression of you? You can honor what she gave you without becoming imprisoned by it. You can forgive what she failed to give without denying its absence. And you can stop carrying her wounds, whether by repeating them or running from them. You are not obligated to fix her life through yours, and you're not betraying her by becoming different. You're simply stepping into your own identity, grounded not in fear or rebellion, but in awareness. That is true freedom. to say, she shaped me, but she does not define me. I can love her story, but I am not bound to live it. And when you reach that point, not becoming her opposite, but becoming yourself, you don't just break the cycle, you redefine the legacy. Number 8, your inner child is still waiting for her love. Your inner child is still waiting for her love, not because you're weak, needy, or stuck in the past, but because the emotional needs that go unmet in childhood don't simply disappear with age. They wait, quietly and patiently, beneath the surface of your adult life, showing up in your relationships, your reactions, your insecurities, and your longing to feel seen, held, and safe. Deep inside you lives the younger version of yourself, the little boy or girl who once looked up with wide eyes, craving the warmth of your mother's arms, the softness of her voice, the safety of her presence, and the simple but profound feeling of being accepted as you are. When that love was inconsistent, absent, conditional, or confusing, the child in you didn't stop needing. It just learned to suppress, to adapt, to pretend those needs didn't exist. So when that love was inconsistent, absent, conditional, or confusing, the child in you didn't stop needing. It just learned to suppress, to adapt, to pretend that the needs are just busy, that it doesn't matter, that the needs don't matter. The needs don't matter. So sometimes those needs didn't matter, but suppressed needs are not healed needs. They are simply buried. And they tend to resurface in adulthood through anxiety, people-pleasing, emotional outbursts, avoidance, or the quiet ache of loneliness you can't quite explain. You may now find yourself in moments of self-doubt, craving external validation, fearing abandonment, or overreacting to rejection, and not know that these are echoes of your inner child still waiting at the door, hoping that one day she will come back and finally say the words you always needed to hear. You are enough. You matter. I love you just as you are. The most heartbreaking part is she may never say them, and that realization can feel like another layer of grief. I couldn't say them. The most heartbreaking part is she may never say them, and that realization can feel like another layer of grief. I couldn't say them. The most heartbreaking part is she may never say them, and that realization can feel like another layer of grief. I couldn't say them. The most heartbreaking part is she may never say them. But here's the truth that shifts everything. While your mother may never become the person your inner child needed, you can stop waiting for her to come back and instead go inward to meet the child within who's been waiting all this time for your attention, your comfort, your protection. You can hold space for that little one who was once ignored or shamed or made to feel invisible. You can offer the love you never received in a voice that says, I see you, I hear you, I will not abandon you again. Reparenting isn't about pretending the past didn't hurt. It's about acknowledging the pain and choosing to respond with compassion instead of neglect. It's about giving yourself permission to grieve what was missing, while also realizing that healing doesn't depend on your mother changing. It depends on you showing up for yourself in the way she couldn't. The inner child isn't a metaphor. It's a real emotional presence within you that wants to be integrated, not silenced. And the moment you stop running from that small voice inside and start listening to it, nurturing it, and loving it, you begin the sacred process of healing from the inside out. You become the mother your soul needed. You break the cycle. You no longer live life trying to fix what she broke. You begin building what you always deserved. That is where true healing lives. Not in waiting for her love, but in finally learning to give it to yourself. Number 9. Forgiveness is not reconciliation, it's liberation. Forgiveness is not reconciliation, it's liberation. Because true forgiveness is not about restoring a broken relationship or pretending the pain never happened, but about releasing yourself from the emotional prison that holding on to resentment, anger, and unmet expectations creates. Many people misunderstand forgiveness as a passive act, a form of weakness, or even a betrayal of justice, especially when the one who caused harm has never acknowledged it or apologized. But forgiveness is not about letting them off the hook. It's about unhooking yourself from the grip their actions still have on your heart, your mind, your nervous system. It's about saying, I choose to no longer carry the weight of your choices in my body, in my thoughts, or in my future. And it's about saying, I choose to no longer carry the weight of your choices in my body, in my thoughts, or in my future. When it comes to your mother, this can be especially complex because the wounds often run deep and personal. She was the first person you were biologically and emotionally bonded to. If she hurt you through absence, manipulation, control, criticism, or emotional neglect, it may feel almost impossible to separate the pain from your identity. And yet, forgiveness doesn't mean you condone what happened. It means that today you can love and lose someone. You can lose someone, but you cannot lose her. So for that reason, it makes absolute sense to forgive your mother that she started you through almost 20 years of pain and exposure to adversity and contract gains, and means you acknowledge the hurt fully, grieve it deeply, and then consciously decide that her unhealed behavior will no longer define your worth, shape your story, or dictate your peace. Reconciliation, on the other hand, requires mutual effort, accountability, and a willingness to rebuild trust, which not every relationship can or should have. Forgiveness is a solo journey. Reconciliation is a joint one. You can forgive your mother without ever speaking to her again. You can release the bitterness in your heart without inviting her back into your life. You can let go of the need for her to change, apologize, or finally get it, and instead choose to change your own inner narrative. Because as long as you wait for her to make it right, you're still giving her power over your healing. Forgiveness says, I reclaim that power. Not for her, but for me. It doesn't erase the past, but it removes the past's control over your present. It's an act of self-love, not permission. It's saying, I deserve to be free, and cutting the invisible cords that have bound you to cycles of pain, longing, and resentment. You begin to breathe again, think clearly again, love freely again. Not because she made amends, but because you made a choice. Forgiveness is not a one-time act. It's a process of loosening your grip on the story of harm so tightly that it can finally stop defining who you are. And when you realize that your healing doesn't depend on her transformation but on your own, you stop waiting, hoping, or hurting, and instead you rise. Forgiveness is not about erasing the wound. It's about choosing to stop bleeding. It's the moment you step out of the emotional shadow of what was and step into the light of what can be. That is liberation, not through reconciliation, but through radical, unconditional release. Number 10, healing begins when you mother yourself. Healing begins when you mother yourself, because the love safety, nurture, and understanding you may have longed for from your mother are not gone forever just because she couldn't give them. They are waiting within you to be awakened, reclaimed, and regiven by your own hands, in your own voice, through your own choices. For so long you may have carried the ache of emotional deprivation, a subtle emptiness echoing from childhood, where you were perhaps unseen, unheard, or made to believe your needs were too much or your feelings were a burden. You might have walked through life hoping someone, anyone, would finally show up the way she didn't, to soothe your pain, hold your vulnerability, protect your boundaries, and tell you that you are lovable exactly as you are. But no external source can ever fully fill that void, because it was never meant to be outsourced again. It must now come from within. Mothering yourself means becoming the nurturer you always needed, the one who whispers kindness when you fail, who allows you to rest without guilt, who holds your tears without judgment, who protects your inner child fiercely and consistently, and who shows up for you every single day, not just when you deserve it, but especially when you don't. This child is within, and it is the one who deserves it, but especially when you don't. The time that you spend with it means the one who shows up for you every single day, not just when you deserve it, but especially when you don't. It's not about pretending you were never hurt. It's about becoming the one who finally tends to the wound with care. You begin to listen to your needs and prioritize your well-being instead of ignoring yourself like you were once ignored. You validate your emotions instead of minimizing them like others may have. You give yourself grace instead of shame, structure instead of chaos, encouragement instead of pressure. And as you learn to do this, slowly and lovingly, you begin to rewrite your emotional blueprint. You begin to trust yourself, feel safe in your own body, and reclaim the worth that was always yours. Mothering yourself also means reparenting the scared parts of you that still feel unsafe, letting them know they are no longer alone, no longer waiting at the door for someone who may never arrive. It means setting boundaries not to push people away, but to protect your peace. It means saying no without apology, resting without guilt, and celebrating yourself without shame. It's about rebuilding that inner sanctuary you never had, and realizing you now have the tools to do so. The most powerful truth is this: the mother you needed doesn't have to remain a ghost of the past. She can live in you now, through your own presence, your own tenderness, your own unshakable commitment to your healing. You become the anchor you always searched for, and in doing so, you don't just heal, you evolve. You break the chain. You become the safe space you never had. Because healing doesn't happen when she changes. It begins the moment you decide to mother yourself with the love, care, and devotion that was always deserved, but now finally received. So here we are at the end of a journey that is deeply personal, profoundly emotional, and often avoided because of how raw it feels to look backward and face what we were never given. But the truth is, healing doesn't come from pretending the past didn't shape us. It comes from having the courage to revisit it with open eyes and a willing heart. Understanding your mother, her limitations, her pain, her patterns, and how they affected you is not about assigning blame. It's about reclaiming the power you lost when you made her treatment of you the definition of your worth. If your mother wounded you, it wasn't because you were unworthy. It was because she hadn't yet healed herself. If she couldn't love you in the way you needed, it's not a reflection of your capacity to be loved. It's a reflection of her capacity to give it. But now, as an adult, you get to choose what to carry forward and what to put down. You are not here to repeat the pain. You are here to rewrite the legacy that starts with awareness and continues with action. Tender, consistent, soul-saving action. So my advice to you now is this. Start mothering yourself, not in theory, but in daily practice. Wake up and ask, what does my inner child need today? Be gentle with your triggers. They are not signs of weakness. They are signals of where your love still needs to go. Set boundaries not to punish others, but to protect your peace. You are not responsible for managing her emotions, nor anyone else's. Give yourself permission to grieve. Grieve the mother you didn't have. Grieve the version of you that thought it was your fault. Grieve the time you spent waiting for love that was never going to come in the way you needed it. Forgive, not to reconcile, but to reclaim your joy. Forgiveness is for you. It's the release that says you no longer get to shape my future through your past. And most importantly, believe that you can heal not by changing her, but by choosing you. Now let us pray together. Dear Divine Presence, today I lay down the burden of what I never received, and I open my heart to the love that is still available to me from within. I release the need to be seen, approved, or validated by the one who could not give what she never received. I forgive,